All right, let's take that introductory look at DHCP at the command line. And when you see the PDF that I'm going to recommend to you at the end of this video, you'll see why I call this an introductory look. We're definitely not going to look at every feature, but I want you to know the basic commands, how to create an address pool, that kind of thing. The one thing that can get a little frustrating at the command line when you're configuring a Cisco router as a DHCP server is that the commands aren't exactly hidden, but they're not exactly in one place either. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about in just a moment. Now, the first thing we need to do is enable the router to serve as a DHCP server. And that is one of our services. Remember these babies? They're all the way at the top of the config. I just did a write erase on this one, so we've got a couple on by default. And then a couple off by default. We know service password encryption off by default. We know how to turn that on and what it does. But you're not going to see every single service listed here that your router can run. And let me show you exactly what I mean by that. Here's a full list of services. And they're not going to be the same on every single router. Not every router has DHCP capabilities, but most of the ones I've seen do. And again, you're going to learn some more of these as time goes on. There are some in here that you will use as a security precaution. Definitely when you take my NA security course, you'll bump into a couple of these. And other ones you might go your entire career and never use. There are services in here that I have never turned off or on outside of a lab environment. But it's a good idea to know how to turn them on, and also that DHCP is one of those services. So the first thing we need to do is turn on the DHCP service. And as you can see, that's not exactly flooded there with options. And usually we're kind of happy about that, right? You know, sometimes you run a command and it doesn't have any options and you're like, hey, that's fine with me. But in this particular case, we've got to know the fundamentals at least with DHCP, how to create the address pool. You know, what network are we giving out? What addresses are we getting out? Are we not going to give out some addresses from that network? What's the lease? That kind of thing. And you're not going to list those here. Where you are going to list them is with the IPDHCP command. And you see a few here that might be important. You know, excluded address, prevent DHCP from assigning certain addresses. Well, that's fine, but how are we assigning them in the first place, you know? Well, we're doing that with the pool command. That's what we're going to concentrate on right here. We're not going to go into the relay and smart relay features. We've got to save something for future studies. So let's go with pool here. And, you know, just be cool with your pool names. Don't give them semi-obscene names or something that might offend somebody if they saw it one day. And yes, I do bring that up every once in a while because I worked at one place and I just could not believe the names they put on their pools, thinking that no one else would ever see them, and boy, were they wrong. But that is a story for another day. So we will just go ahead and call this one addresses. I know it's boring, but that's what we're going with. And there are no options, so we just hit enter, and notice now we drop into DHCP config mode. So that means that our options here should be a little different, and we see some more familiar options here. You know, here are the default routers. Here, you know, what DNS servers do you want to tell your clients about? What's the domain name? Let's see, lease, of course, very important. I'll show you an option for that you need to know about. And a couple of WINS options there, or at least one WINS name server option. So again, we're not going to go into all of these, but let's go ahead and pick a network that we're going to assign. And sometimes you'll be fortunate enough just to have a whole range of addresses you're going to give out, and that's just it. But every once in a while, you might have to exclude some addresses in a pool, and that's what we're going to do here. But first, you have to go ahead and create the pool, which is what we've done here. So let's go ahead and go with network. In an unusual option here, network number in dotted decimal notation, just in case you were tempted to type it in binary, I suppose. So we'll go ahead. Even I don't like that, and I dream in ones and zeros. And now we can put our network mask or prefix length in. You know, we can do a slash and put the two numbers in. So I'm going to do that. And those are the options. So let's say that is the address range that we're going to hand out in DHCP. But, and you knew that was coming, but what we can't do is hand out the first address. We just want to give out 2 through 100 as far as that fourth octet goes. So we don't want to give out .1, and then we don't want to give out 101 through 255. Well, how are we going to do that? We looked at options here, and we didn't see anything about excluding Did we see anything back here? Yeah. In IP DHCP, this is actually where you're going to list your excluded addresses. You don't do it in the pool config itself. We will go do that in just a moment. I want to look at lease while we're here because I'm going to give you that dad lecture again. Please listen to this. Please. With lease, we know it's going to be a length of time, so what do we always do? We use iOS help to see what time source, not time source, but what unit of time we're using. Because if I ask you on a job interview or a certification exam, set that lease to 48 hours for me on the DHCP pool when you create it. Well, let's just say you're in a hurry or you're just really sure in your abilities. Nothing wrong with that, but you might want to look anyway, because if you put lease 48 here, that's going to be wrong because it's in days, 0 through 365. So what you would need to do there then, if I said 48 hours, you just put 2. 48 would be an incorrect answer. Also notice that you do have an option to assign a lease with infinitely. So not too many people like to do that. We usually like to put a week or a month on it, something like that. But watch that lease option. So let's go ahead and scoot out of there and look at that DHCP option again that I want to look at. Excluded address. Prevent DHCP from assigning certain addresses. So let's go ahead and put that. And notice it says low IP address, because wouldn't it, well, I can't put it that way. Wouldn't it be terrible if you had to put a line in for every single IP address you were going to exclude, if you were going to exclude 150 or some, .1 and then 101 through 255? That would not be a good idea. But you can't quite use the range thing like interface range here. What you're actually doing is defining the low IP address and the high IP address of the range of addresses you're excluding. You're not going to be using the little dashes we did with interface range or commas, anything like that. Now, you're already saying to yourself, what if I only have one address in a range that I want to exclude? What do I do then? What do I do if it's just 172.12.123.1 and that's the only address I want to exclude? Well, you can do that because there's your CR. So this is a legal command, even though it indicates low IP address, high IP address, so it's indicating a range with the iOS command, help command, then you don't have to do that. You can just put one address in. So now you're saying to yourself, another question, can I do all these on one line? Can I put in a single address and then a range? You can't do that, but fortunately you can do more than one entry. And I could have just used up arrow, which is what I'm going to do there. And then if I wanted to make this one 101 through 255, what you would do there is put, that's the low address in the range, and then the high IP address in a range. And that's it. And you can see I put in 2 different excluded address commands and the router didn't give me any trouble about it. So it's perfectly legal. So again, it's this is not an exhaustive, comprehensive look at everything you can do with DHCP on a router, but I think it's important stuff for you. It's good for you to see this in action. Now, how's the other thing go? If you'd like to learn more about DHCP, you should go to this particular PDF. I'm not going to put the URL in. This is a homework assignment for you, but if you put in your favorite search engine, Cisco router configuration DHCP, you're going to find this in about 3 seconds. And it's got all kinds of great information. It walks you through setting the address pool. Some of these we did, but everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Setting the DNS servers for the client, you use the DNS server command and then put in the address of the DNS servers. But when you get into configuring a DHCP server boot file, that kind of thing, you will want to go out here and read this a bit. There is some good stuff. Also, watch this ping packets, because by default the DHCP server pings a pool address twice before assigning it to a client. That's actually a bit of a fail-safe the router does, because it's just going to make sure that no one else is already using it. So all kinds of good information here as far as DHCP, not required reading for your CCENT or CCNA, but it is good stuff. We always would rather do a little too much reading than not enough. So enjoy that PDF. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next section.